Resident Evil has killed its final bosses in some of the most grotesque ways imaginable. From a man dissolving into a 5-stage wall of flesh and teeth, to a genetically engineered supervillain taking 2 rockets to the face while sinking into a volcano. Today we're ranking the 8 most brutal final boss deaths in the franchise, from least to most gruesome. Starting with a death so poetic, most people missed the symbolism entirely. Alexia Ashford. Alexia Ashford is one of the most overlooked villains in the entire franchise. Code. Veronica came out in 2000, sandwiched between RE2 and RE3's cultural dominance, and most people either skipped it or forgot it existed. That's a shame, because Alexia's death is the most thematically loaded kill on this entire list. Here's the setup. Alexia spent 15 years in self-induced cryogenic sleep, letting the T. Veronica virus slowly bond with her body. She woke up with control over her own blood, which she could ignite, and the ability to produce venom, manipulate insects, and transform at will. Chris Redfield fights her across 3 separate forms. First, she's a gray-skinned fire queen, regenerating, burning, and instantly killing you if she gets her hands on you. Then her lower body bloats into a grotesque brood sac, sprouting tentacles and blade-tipped stinger appendages. This is genuinely one of the hardest boss forms in RE history. Players still complain about it 25 years later. And then she reaches her final form, a massive dragonfly. And that's where it gets interesting. Earlier in the game, there's a film strip showing young Alexia and her twin brother Alfred as children. They're pulling the wings off a dragonfly and feeding it to ants. Alexia kept journals describing humanity as ants beneath her, worthless insects unworthy of the gift she planned to give them. She saw herself as something above them entirely, untouchable. But in her final form, Alexia is the dragonfly, and Chris Redfield, the ant she would have dismissed without a second thought, is holding the linear launcher. One shot, superheated plasma. The Ashford bloodline ends in a single trigger pull. Here's the kicker. The linear launcher was designed by her own father, Alexander Ashford, the same man she transformed into the monster Nosferatu and locked away in a freezer. He built the weapon specifically because he feared what she would become. Alexia gets killed by a gun built out of her father's love and terror. She never stood a chance. Clean death. Elegant. No explosion of viscera, no drawn-out dismemberment. But don't worry, that changes very quickly, because next up, we have a woman who's been alive for over 100 years and managed to connect the entire Resident Evil timeline to a single Romanian village, Mother Miranda. Mother Miranda doesn't look like the final boss of anything. She walks around her village in a plague doctor mask and a black robe, and the locals treat her like a god. She's been doing this for over a century, and the longer you play RE8, the more you realize she is the thread that connects every single Resident Evil game to a village in Eastern Europe nobody's ever heard of. Here's what most people miss. Miranda was a researcher who discovered the Megamycete, a massive underground fungal organism capable of storing human memories and consciousness. Back in the early 1900s, she caught the attention of a young Oswell Spencer. That name should ring a bell. Spencer is the man who founded Umbrella Corporation. Miranda was his teacher. Every T-virus, every G-virus, every zombie outbreak in Raccoon City, every horror in every mainline Resident Evil game traces back to ideas seeded by a grieving woman in a remote mountain village. Her fingerprints are on the entire franchise. She's been alive for over a century because the Megamycete won't let her die. She's been trying to use it to resurrect her dead daughter Eva for just as long. The four lords, Heisenberg, Dimitrescu, Moreau, Donna Beneviento, were all failed attempts to create a body capable of hosting Eva's soul. Ethan's daughter Rose is her final attempt. Everything in RE8 is Miranda refusing to let her daughter go. The fight itself cycles through 4 phases: claws, wings, spider legs, and a pitch-black darkness form where she attacks while nearly invisible. The kill requires shooting a glowing Megamycete cloud above her head until it collapses onto her, then putting a magnum round clean through her torso. She drops, the mold crumbles, but Miranda's death is really the trigger for something worse. After she falls, Ethan's mold body starts disintegrating. It turns out he's been dead since Jack Baker killed him in RE7. The mold kept him walking. He hands baby Rose to Chris Redfield and says, the quietest, most devastating line in the whole game. Watch over her. Teach her to be strong. Then he walks into the Megamycete with a bomb and detonates detonates himself to destroy the mold forever. Miranda spent 100 years trying to bring her daughter back to life. Ethan spent one night making sure his daughter would get to keep hers. The physical kill is clean. What it costs is not. But if you want to see a death where the body horror actually happens to the boss, the next entry has you covered: Osmund Sadler. Osmund Sadler is the reason every Resident Evil final boss gets a rocket launcher. Before him, the franchise finale was a big guy with too much HP situation. Sadler changed the formula. He mutated into something genuinely horrible, nearly killed the protagonist, and then got humiliated by a woman in a red dress tossing a weapon from a helicopter. It's perfect. Here's what Sadler actually turns into. In the original RE4, he becomes a roughly 15-foot spider thing with eyeballs bulging out of his leg joints and a massive master eye sitting directly inside his open mouth. He skitters across the arena on his new limbs, while his original human torso hangs beneath him like a passenger. Every time you put enough rounds into the leg eyes to stagger him, he crumples down long enough for Leon to climb up and knife the mouth eye. Do that enough times, and Ada Wong arrives in a helicopter and tosses Leon a special rocket launcher. One shot. Sadler explodes into charred fragments. Leon delivers his line, and the island blows up. Clean, iconic, permanent. But the 2023 remake decided that wasn't personal enough. In the remake, Sadler gets 2 full phases. Phase 1 is the spider form, updated and more aggressive. Leon doesn't just let the explosion do the work. He leaps onto Sadler and drives Sadler's own Los Illuminados ceremonial scepter through his skull. The cult leader dies impaled on his own symbol of power, by the hands of the man he spent the entire game trying to infect. That's not just a kill, that's a statement. The community's other favorite detail is that you don't have to do any of this. You can buy a regular rocket launcher from the merchant before the fight starts, and one-shot Sadler before the mutation even triggers. Steam forums are full of players recommending exactly this for S+ rank runs. A boss so iconic that half the fanbase's proudest memory of him is skipping him entirely. Sadler, you're small time. 4 words. That's all Leon gives him. Sadler codified what a Resident Evil ending should feel like. Explosive, cathartic, slightly ridiculous, and somehow satisfying every single time. But the next entry takes the word ridiculous and runs it through a factory made entirely of grinding metal and screaming flesh. Karl Heisenberg. Karl Heisenberg is the funniest villain in Resident Evil history. He's a chain-smoking, trench coat-wearing factory owner with the power to magnetically control metal, and he spends most of RE8 being openly sarcastic about the cult he's been forced to serve. He calls Miranda a hag. He tries to recruit Ethan into a scheme to overthrow her. When Ethan refuses, Heisenberg drops him into a factory full of corpse-powered machinery, lights a cigar, and walks away. He is exactly as unhinged as that sounds, and then he fuses his body with the factory. His final form is a towering biomechanical centaur built from industrial scrap, spinning saw blades, mechanical crane arms, and a massive chainsaw sword the size of a shipping container. His human face is still partially visible inside the machinery, half swallowed by metal, eyes wild, screaming at Ethan the whole time. Red glowing weak points cover the joints and plating. He looks like what would happen if a junkyard became self-aware and decided it hated you personally. Chris Redfield, who arrives midway through RE8 and immediately starts solving every problem with military hardware, builds Ethan a makeshift self-propelled artillery vehicle before sending him outside. Heisenberg crashes down from the sky to meet it. The fight is Ethan circling in the tank, targeting glowing weak spots while Heisenberg charges with saw blade attacks and magnetic debris throws. Every hit staggers him. Every miss means a spinning blade the size of a car coming directly at your windshield. Then comes the moment the community will not stop talking about. Heisenberg flings the tank into the air. Ethan is airborne, separated from his weapon, falling. The tank's cannon swings back into reach. Ethan grabs it mid-flight, aims directly at Heisenberg's exposed face, and fires. One shot, the centaur collapses. It is completely absurd and absolutely spectacular, but the line that made Heisenberg immortal came earlier. During a confrontation with Chris, he calls him a boulder-punching asshole, a direct reference to RE5's infamous boulder scene. Capcom put it in the script deliberately. The moment became an instant meme and is now considered one of the best single lines in the franchise's history. Heisenberg's death is the most action movie entry on this list. Big, loud, metallic, and built for a crowd. But the next boss didn't get to die with spectacle. He got to die with dignity, and that makes it so much worse. Jack Baker? Jack Baker is the scariest enemy in Resident Evil 7. He crashes through walls, survives a car explosion, regrows his own head after you blow it off with a shotgun, and stalks you through the Baker house with the calm, cheerful energy of a man who has done this many times before. Welcome to the family, son. You hear that that line in your sleep. But here's the thing about Jack Baker that most people don't fully process until the credits roll. He was a good man. A husband, a father, a veteran. Eveline, the bioweapon Ethan came to the Baker estate to rescue, crawled inside his mind and turned him into something he never chose to be. Every horrifying thing Jack does in RE7 happens because a little girl with godlike mold powers decided she wanted a family and took one by force. You fight Jack 3 times across the game. First in the garage, where he drives a car into Ethan and keeps going after surviving the resulting explosion. Then in the dissection room, where he produces 2 chainsaws from somewhere and locks blades with Ethan in a grinding, sparking duel that is one of the most intense boss fights in the series. DualShockers noted that the dissection room fight specifically traps you in an enclosed space with almost 0 room to breathe, which is exactly the right way to design a horror boss encounter. The final form happens in the boathouse. Jack transforms into a massive reptilian mass of black mold, studded with eyes across his entire body, dozens of them. They cover his arms, his back, his torso. He still talks through it, voice distorted and breaking, raging about Ethan turning his family against him, mourning Marguerite's death. The player has to burst every single eye on his body with shotgun blasts before using a serum to calcify him. He hardens mid-scream and shatters, but that's not actually the worst thing that happens to Jack Baker. In the end of Zoe DLC, his cells refuse to stop mutating. He becomes the Swamp Man, a decayed, near-invincible monster, barely recognizable as the man he used to be. His brother Joe Baker hunts him down with bare fists and a bionic gauntlet. The final blow obliterates Jack's entire upper body. Joe's line as he delivers it, "This is a farewell from the family, brother." It is the most physically brutal single kill in the entire RE7 and RE8 era, and it happens in downloadable content that most people have never played. But before all of that, trapped inside the Mold Hive mind, there's a vision. A peaceful, uncorrupted Jack. The man he was before Eveline got into his head. His last words to Ethan are quiet and completely devastating. "Ethan, free my family, please." No other boss on this list makes you feel guilty for pulling the trigger. But the next one doesn't give you any feelings at all, except horror. Because by the time you fight him, he has no face left to feel sorry for. William Birkin. William Birkin is the reason Raccoon City is a crater. He spent his entire career at Umbrella developing the G-Virus, a mutagenic pathogen capable of turning its host into an endlessly evolving killing machine. When Umbrella's special forces showed up to steal his research, Birkin injected the virus into himself rather than hand it over. The ensuing chaos caused him to destroy a vial of T-virus samples, which leaked into the city's water supply through rats. Every zombie in RE2. Every nightmare in Raccoon City, every death in both Leon and Claire's campaigns. All of it is William Birkin's fault, and then the game makes you watch what the G-Virus does to him across 5 separate boss encounters. Stage 1, still mostly human. A massive tumorous eyeball has erupted from his right shoulder. His clothes are still on. He's enormous, he's enraged, and he wields a metal pipe. You can still see his face. That's the worst part. Stage 2. A second head begins forming. As the first one recedes, his body has doubled in size. The pipe is gone. He doesn't need it anymore. Stage 3. Eyes erupt across his arms and back. The remake adds grotesque clusters of them packed into a split chest cavity, staring outward in every direction. He drops to all fours. Whatever was left of William Birkin, the scientist, is gone. Stage 4. Pure tumorous mass. Tusks. Random eyes protruding from the flesh at every angle, bloated beyond recognition, moving on instinct. Stage 5, G5, is where Resident Evil 2 stops pretending. G5 is a formless wall of writhing flesh and gnawing teeth. It rips the top off the escape train to accommodate its size and begins advancing down the carriages toward Leon, Claire, and Sherry. There are no human features left, just spreading, pulsating meat with a single enormous eye stretched across the inside of a gaping mouth. If it reaches you, you die instantly. The train's biohazard detection system identifies the organism and triggers a self-destruct countdown. The player has to keep firing into the exposed eye to slow G5 down while the timer runs. Leon and Claire grab Sherry and sprint for the exit. The train and the nest facility detonate together. What makes this death genuinely tragic rather than just disgusting is the through-line Capcom threads through every transformation. In the early stages, Birkin occasionally catches a glimpse of his daughter Sherry and hesitates. Brief moments of recognition surface in the middle of pure mutation-driven rage. The man is still in there somewhere, watching himself dissolve. His wife Annette's line when she first sees what he has become says everything. Good God, William. What have you done? He wanted to become a G-human with preserved intelligence and godlike resilience. Instead, he became a train crash. 5 deaths inside 1, and the train explosion is the mercy. But if you think a formless flesh monster advancing down a hallway is the most terrifying death on this list, wait until you hear what Umbrella built specifically to hunt one person, and what that person does to it with a railgun. Nemesis. For the entire game, Nemesis hunts you. That's his only purpose. Umbrella programmed a Tyrant-class bioweapon with a single directive: find and eliminate every surviving member of STARS. He doesn't stop. He doesn't sleep. He crashes through walls you thought were safe barriers and shows up in locations the game never warned you about. In the original RE3, he could follow Jill into areas that were supposed to be secure. Nowhere was truly safe. He is the original gaming stalker, the direct blueprint for Mr. X, Nemesis-type enemies, every horror game pursuer that came after him, and Jill Valentine kills him by shoving a railgun down his throat. By the final encounter, Nemesis has devolved well past the trench coat and tentacles form that spends most of the game chasing Jill through Raccoon City. In the remake, an acid spill at the Nest 2 facility triggers uncontrolled evolution rather than killing him. He becomes a massive, stationary mass of pulsating red and pink flesh that fills the room. Pustules cover his body, tentacles whip from the walls. If he grabs Jill, he crushes and bites down for an instant kill. There is nothing left that looks like the thing that was hunting you an hour ago. He is pure mutation, pure hunger. Jill acquires the FINGER. That stands for Ferromagnetic Infantry Use Next Generation Railgun. First shot damages him and kicks off the real fight. To recharge, Jill has to push 3 red power cell cylinders back into wall slots while simultaneously popping pink pustules on Nemesis's body to keep him stunned and away from the cells. Get it wrong, and a tentacle rips the cylinder back out. Get it right, and the gun charges for a second shot. Then a third, but it's the third shot that the community remembers. A QTE prompts the player to tilt the analog stick forward. Jill physically advances on the thing that has terrorized her for the entire game, presses the barrel of the railgun directly into its open mouth, and fires down its throat. The inside of Nemesis obliterates. The mask collapses. It's over. 2 versions of this kill exist across 21 years of the franchise, and both get the line exactly right. The original 1999 version, Jill delivers one of gaming's most legendary one-liners before the kill shot. You want STARS? I'll give you STARS. She turns his entire programmed purpose against him in 7 words. The remake moves that line to an earlier encounter and saves the finale for something quieter, colder, and arguably better. Jill looks at what's left of Nemesis and says, "Next time, take the fucking hint." The fans loved it so much that a community member built a life-size finger replica. It's 8 feet long. It's accurate down to the power cells. That's what a good kill does. It lives so far outside the screen that people spend months building the weapon in their garage. But nothing on this list has that kind of staying power. Nothing except a man taking 2 rockets to the face while sinking into a volcano, still screaming the hero's name on the way down. Albert Wesker. Albert Wesker is Resident Evil's Darth Vader. He was in the original game in 1996, apparently died, came back with superhuman speed and regeneration, spent the next 13 years manipulating every major event in the franchise from the shadows, and ended up in a volcano in 2009, taking 2 rockets to the face while a tentacle monster made of his own body tried to drag a helicopter into the lava with him. Nobody in this franchise had a more complete arc. Nobody got a more ridiculous send-off, and nobody deserved it more. Here's what the final sequence actually looks like. Chris and Sheva have been fighting Wesker throughout RE5, and they finally inject him with a viral suppressant overdose that destabilizes his mutations. Rather than die quietly, Wesker infects himself with the Ouroboros virus on the spot. His torso splits open. Black writhing tentacles erupt from his body in every direction. A glowing orange heart becomes the only weak point on a creature that is now somewhere between a man and a biological disaster. He loses his superhuman speed but gains a right arm that has partially absorbed nearby debris into a massive metallic blade. He is furious, he is massive, and he is absolutely done talking. Their crashed bomber has plunged into an active volcano. Chris and Sheva are on rock platforms surrounded by lava. Wesker chases them across collapsing stone bridges, tentacles tearing at whatever they can reach. When Sheva falls and clings to a ledge over molten rock, Chris has to hold Wesker's attention by shooting while she climbs back to safety, and then Chris punches a boulder. To create a stepping stone across the lava, Chris Redfield physically punches a massive volcanic boulder repeatedly until it rolls into position. This is real. This happens in the game. Know Your Meme has a dedicated page for it. It generated thousands of videos, parodies, and references across 15 plus years of internet culture. Capcom leaned into it so hard that they had Heisenberg call Chris a boulder-punching asshole in RE8. A full 12 years later, the boulder punch is immortal. After weakening Wesker on the platform, the rock gives way. He sinks into the lava. A BSAA helicopter arrives carrying Jill Valentine. She drops a rope ladder. Chris and Sheva climb, but Wesker, sinking, burning, still losing, sends a massive Ouroboros tentacle screaming upward to grab the helicopter and drag everyone into the volcano with him. He will not go alone. Jill spots 2 RPG-7 launchers aboard the helicopter. Chris and Sheva each grab one. They aim at the tentacled, lava-soaked, half-dissolved thing that has been the primary villain of the Resident Evil franchise for over a decade. They fire simultaneously. 2 rockets slam directly into Wesker's face. The explosion consumes him. The tentacles release. Sheva's line lands over the fireball. That was for our fallen brothers. 13 years of villainy. Rockets, volcano. Done. Wesker's producer Masachika Kawata confirmed it on record. Wesker is permanently dead. 2 RPGs, active lava, and the Ouroboros virus consuming him from the inside. There is no version of that anyone walks away from. The community has called it absurd, operatic, campy, and magnificent, often in the same sentence. They're right on every count. Complete. Global. Saturation. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.